What's going on, guys? Welcome to the first LowKick MMA weekly roundup of 2021. I'm your host, Ryan Galloway, and joining me as always is Jordan Ellis. Jordan, how you been, mate? How's the break been?
Yeah, it's been well. It hasn't been that good. I've had COVID, so I've been resting up in bed, but I'm feeling better now, and looking forward to some fights.
Yeah, that'll be a good thing after having COVID. At least you got through it, and now we got three back-to-back events all in the span of 1 week. So there's a lot. I suppose we're only going to talk about the first one here, but it's going to be a good week of fights come next week, isn't it?
Yeah, it's especially for us and the times for the UK and European fans are really nice. I think one starts about 3 in the afternoon for us, and then six in the afternoon. So really nice times. And then you top it all off with a Conor McGregor fight at the end. I love the Fight Island experience. They've got some fans back in there. A lot of really good fights as well. So we've had a little break. I've been sitting in bed doing nothing. So I'm really happy to get back to fights and get back to what we do.
Absolutely, and so we'll jump straight into the card for this weekend, which is obviously a big matchup in the featherweight division. You got the former champion Max Holloway taking on Calvin Kattar, the rising star. Big clash of styles, I guess, in this one. I'd say Max Holloway, with his reach and his length, is going to, on paper, cause a lot of trouble for Kattar, but we saw in a few of his last matchups that he's able to weather the storm. You look against Zabit, it was a much longer guy, and in the third round there, he came on strong and looked like he could take over in that fight. Obviously, this one's a 5 round. How do you see this one going in a 5 round fight?
I'm picking Max all day. I still think in my opinion, he should be the champion right now. I think he's a couple of levels above Calvin Kattar, who at one point Calvin Kattar in my eyes was the next contender, but I weren't as that impressed with his last performance against Dan Ige. I thought he potentially could have got rid of him and things like that, and I just don't think he's got enough to take out Max Holloway. He's a power puncher, but Max Holloway's got one of the best chins in MMA. So I just think that cancels out. And then if you look at it besides that and just the pure skills, I think Holloway's got enough. He'll keep him edge and he'll put a beating on him over the 5 rounds if it goes that long, or he might even stop him late. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm a bit torn on this one because on one hand, we saw in the first fight with Volkanovski, Holloway really had struggled against someone who was putting pressure and using low kicks and not really jumping into a firefight with him. He was being more methodical with his techniques and just outpointing him. And it looked like before the second fight, that was the way to beat Max. There was the blueprint. Everyone will use it. But then in the second fight, Max made some really good changes, came forward more, landed big shots of his own, and it was a much more competitive fight, regardless of who won, who lost. Max Holloway looked good in that fight. So I don't see like any holes in his game that might have been apparent in that first Volkanovski matchup anymore. So even if Kattar was to look at that fight and try and do the same thing and emulate the same fight, it's not going to happen. So I really think this is going to come down to, can Kattar get inside the range and land the biggest shots, or is Holloway just going to keep him on the outside and beat him apart like he does with everyone else, you know?
Yeah, I think Holloway is just, he's been there, he's done it. He's very committed to getting another title shot, and he's doing, he's doing the hard graft. He's taking on Calvin Kattar, who's, he's knocked out Jeremy Stevens. Let's not forget that as well. So he's a very impressive contender, Kattar. I just don't think he's got enough, in terms of coming up against Holloway, who is one of the best fighters, pound for pound, full stop. Never mind just in featherweight. He is one of the better fighters in the UFC. And I think he's just going to have too much for him tonight on the night. I think he'll probably eat a few shots early, and he'll have to be able to take them. But and once he does that, he'll start to take over, dictate the fight, and I think he'll see something not too similar, but kind of like Brian Ortega, where he's just beating on him towards the end. I think.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because we do have two strikers here, and with a fight like this, I always wonder, is it going to turn into a grappling match? Is one of the two going to... I don't think Max will be the one, but is Kattar going to try and use his grappling to take down Max? Because we've seen in the past, not always, but it has been a problem for Max. Like Dustin Poirier was able to submit him early in his career. I think he has another submission loss that I'm forgetting. But do you think Kattar ever tries to shoot on him late in the fight? Do you reckon he takes him down? And what happens if that happens?
No, I think Qatar's got a very clear route to victory, and it's just land on him. Max Holloway, I think he's absorbed the most strikes in UFC history, or something like that. I seen the stat the other day. He's absorbed a ton of strikes. I think it was like 900 strikes in the octagon. Qatar's probably one of the heavier hitters in the featherweight division. So there's your route to victory. Go and put one on his chin and wobble him, because, you know, Max Holloway, he eats shots, and he's very, you can get to him early, and he does take a lot of shots. So I think Kattar will just be confident. You know, I'm going to go in and I'm going to try and rip his head off. And I don't see why he'd want to mix it up now, you know, and start trying to wrestle when, you know, his bread and butter is you know, knocking dudes out. And Holloway is as strong as he looks, you know, in terms of ability to take a shot. Everyone can get hurt, and I'm sure Kattar will fancy himself to do that.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you there. I think it really will be the power of Kattar versus the range and the pressure of Holloway. And I agree with you. I think Holloway might take this one. But I do consider this as a fight of the night contender. There's a lot of great fights in this card, but that's definitely one of them. So hopefully it is everything we think it will be and what we hope for. And hopefully that's a good start to the year. But right before that, we have a welterweight co-main event between Carlos Condit and Matt Brown. What are your thoughts on this matchmaking?
I love it, you know, and this is what we've been speaking about, you know, matching the legends with the legends. You know, Carlos Condit got a nice win last time out, but you don't need to go and put him in there with, you know, just off the top of my head, Jake Matthews, who beat Sanchez. You know, what's the point in that? He's a contender, and Carlos Condit's very much in a different stage of his career, and so is Matt Brown. I think, you know, there's a really fun fight that we would have loved to have seen about, you know, 5-10 years ago. It would have been epic, but we're getting it now. It's still fun, and I imagine these two will come out swinging. And I think it's a toss up on who will win, and I can't wait to watch.
Yeah, that's the thing about this fight. Both guys have struggled against wrestling heavy opponents, and they've struggled in the grappling department, which makes me think that both guys are just going to stand and bang until one of them gets finished. Or I really don't know who wins this one, but I expect it to be a fight, that's for sure.
Yeah, Condit's kind of got that crisper striking. Matt Brown's just an animal, isn't he? And he'll just keep coming forward and putting it on him. And, you know, as of late, we've seen Condit kind of wilt under the pressure. You know, I think it was 5 losses on the row or something like that. So he's got to, you know, stamp his authority on the fight. But I fancy Condit going in, but really it is a 50-50 fight. And whoever wins, I don't want to see them jumping into the rankings and fighting anyone who's ranked. I want to see them fighting, you know, Diego Sanchez or, you know, Cerrone or, you know, these type of people. It's fun to watch, and it's a fair fight. You know, it's not fair to throw either of these guys in with, you know, the top 15. I just don't want to see it.
Yeah, I tend to agree. And just on Diego Sanchez, I don't know if you saw today, but he said he wants one more fight and then he's done, and he'll let Dana White pick the opponent. Do you think a winner of this fight could be a potential contender for that fight? Would that make sense?
Absolutely. I think it's a perfect fight. Winner of this fight, or even the loser. You know, it really doesn't matter. Either of these guys, they're not going to lose a ton of credit if they lose this fight. So I'd put either of them winning with Diego Sanchez. It'd be a fun fight. Both of them have got name value. I think Matt Brown already beat Diego, and Diego had an issue with the finish because the elbow was a bit behind the head. So that'd be fun to run back. And then obviously Condit, you know, he's a name. He probably should have been a champion as well. And Diego will be happy to take him on it. There's really a lot of fun fights. You know, Dan Hardy's been chatting about coming back as well. He can jump in the mix. I want to see these guys fight each other, even if the past the prime and in the older ages. It's still fun.
For sure. Right before that, we have the return of someone who's been away for many years, actually, and that's Santiago Ponzinibbio against Li Jingliang. Ponzinibbio, I don't know what he's going to look like coming back because it's been like over 2 years since he last fought. I think it was November of 2018, possibly, when his last fight was. And was that against Neil Magny? I feel like it was. I feel like he knocked Neil Magny out. But yeah, big layoff. What does he look like? He did have COVID at the end of last year from memory because I think he was booked and then he had to leave that fight, or he had some injury. How do you expect to see him return in this one? Do you think he gets the win?
I never fancy people when they're coming off these layoffs, but Ponzinibbio is a you know, he's potentially a top 5 welterweight. He is that good, or he was that good. You know, he picked up a few good wins. Mike Perry before, you know, he was on his downslide. Neil Magny's a good win. Gunnar Nelson's a good win. So there's a few really good ones, and he's fighting Li Jingliang, and I think that's a nice fight to come back to. I think, you know, it's not top 15. You know, he can ease his way in. He can have a bad night and potentially still beat Lee. So I do fancy Ponzinibbio to win this fight. I just don't know how. If he's, you know, in top form, I think he'll get the knockout. If not, he'll labor to a decision win. It's going to be interesting, you know, because can he still be a contender? After all them years off and coming back and doing that. I'm not sure, and it's one of them. There's question marks all over this fight, but whatever way I go, I tend to lean towards him getting the win one way or the other.
Yeah, and I mean, it's a really important win from here, especially because you've got Neil Magny fighting in the main event a couple of days after against Michael Chiesa. That's a top contender fight right there. So if Magny gets that win and Ponzinibbio gets a big win here, I think he's got a pretty big argument to get a rematch against Neil Magny since he just beat him. It's like, that would make a lot of sense. Or he could get Chiesa off that. If he gets a win here, this is going to step him up real quick, I think. I think the division's about to start moving fast, so he needs this win. And just MMA maths, I know it doesn't work, but Li Jingliang just lost to Neil Magny, right? And he got beaten in a decision. Ponzinibbio knocked him out in his last fight. All signs are pointing, in my opinion, to Ponzinibbio getting the win here. I do expect it to come via knockout. I don't know what's round, but I do expect him to finish it before the fight ends. And yeah.
Yeah, it's a good fight, and it's a nice fight for Ponzinibbio. I think, if he jumps straight back into the top 15, top 10, he might just struggle because they're all live, they're all live right now, and they're all game and fresh, and he's going to be a bit rusty, and it's about shaking that rust off, just getting the win in the bank. If he got a knockout and made a statement, that'd be great, but just get the win, shake the rust off, and come again later in 2021, hopefully.
For sure. And speaking of highlight reel knockouts, right before that, we got Joaquin Buckley, many people's knockout of the year from 2020, taking on Alessio Di Chirico. I hope I said that right. Obviously, the middleweight bout. Both guys had mixed results in the UFC from memory. I can't remember Di Chirico's record off memory, but I know that Buckley came in, lost to Holland. He's been on a bit of a tear since then, putting on really impressive performances. Obviously, that knockout of Impa Kasanganai. Then he went out there and he beat someone who I'm blanking on not long ago, also by knockout. So what do you think of the matchmaking here, and what do you think happens in this one?
I think it's a showcase fight for Joaquin Buckley. I think it's made to make him look good. I feel like after he's got all this hype behind him, but there's no rush to push him into big fights yet. I think Alessio is a nice fight. He's on a losing streak in terms of, I think he's lost 3 on the bounce now. Mm-hmm. He against people who I'd fancy Buckley to beat as well. So it's I expect Buckley to look good. I expect him to get another high-profile knockout, and then later in the year they're going to start pushing him towards the rankings. I think Dana White's very much on the Buckley hype train, so to speak, and he's building them right now, and this is kind of made for him to go out and get a performance bonus and look fantastic. And Alessio will probably get cut, and Buckley will probably get another 50k.
Yeah, well, I think that you're right. I think this is just a showcase fight where they've tailor-made it to try and put Buckley on the map of the rankings. Because if you look at it, he was meant to... All this hype was around him fighting James Krause. James Krause wanted the fight. He wanted the fight. He called for it after his last fight. And I think that's probably more of a dangerous matchup than this one here. No disrespect, but I think James Krause is just more of a veteran in the sport and someone who's going to cause a lot more problems for Buckley. But instead of booking that fight, which everything was pointing towards, they went ahead and booked this one. So I think they are trying to build him. I think you're right. And hopefully that means we still get the Krause fight, because I think a lot of people want that. But yeah, all signs are trending towards him getting a ranked opponent soon, aren't they?
Yeah, and the thing about the Krause fight is that James Krause is a 170. He looks really good at 170. I know he fought at 185, but that was on a day's notice. He's not a middleweight. And Buckley, he could potentially get down to welter. I'm pretty sure he comes in under the limit a lot, so he could potentially get there. But right now there is a weight issue, and I think the UFC are looking at it saying James Krause is, someone on the tail end of his career. He's very much interested in coaching right now. And we've got this star. Why do we want to put him with someone like James Krause, who potentially beats him and then walks off into the sunset? It's pointless. Let's carry on building this young guy who's probably mid-20s. And I think it's tailor-made for him to go out and look fantastic. And he's getting a push from the UFC now. And he come from nowhere, and he deserves it, because he got a brilliant knockout. He took Kevin Holland on a few days' notice, and he did well there, although he lost. So I'm happy to see him getting a push. I like the James Krause fight from a animosity standpoint, but in terms of actually making sense, I don't think the fight does make sense. So I'm happy to see Buckley in a different fight.
Fair enough. So opening the main card on the event, we have Punahali Soriano versus Dusko Todorovic. Middleweight bout again. What are your thoughts on the matchup in this one? And being on the main card as well. What do you think of that?
Well, it's not great, but Dusko's the only one I'm actually familiar with. I remember last year he beat Darren Stewart on a Cage Warriors card. You remember when
That's
UFC
right.
London got
Yep.
cancelled and they carried him over? It was a terrible fight, to be fair. I think he just wrestled, and held down, and it was very old school in terms of technique. Just there was no desire to put any punishment on Darren Stewart. It was let's just hold him, let's just do this as good as we can. But a win's a win. Have I got the right person, or am I thinking of someone else?
I'm not too sure about that, but I know that both these guys are undefeated, so that's one of the interesting storylines in this matchup here, I guess. 7-0 versus 10-0.
Yeah, I'm thinking of someone else then. Yeah, I'm not honestly familiar with either of these fighters then. So I'm very interested to see it. They always do this with the UFC, don't they? They always tend to put there's always that fight on the main card, especially in these fight and ones or the ESPN cards, where you're just not sure why it's there, but then they always like to have a better fight on the main event prelim. So as we always say, it's a good opportunity for these two fighters to go out and make a name for themselves. Two undefeated fighters, as you said. Middleweight, I'm sure they can bang. Interested to see it, but it's not one that I'm, get me popcorn out for. I'm looking forward to the other ones above that. But, good luck to them.
That's it. That's why I brought up the placement. It does seem weird to be on the main card. Both guys have one UFC fight each. Soriano's was in the end of 2019. Todorovic was in the end of 2020 from memory. Anyway, they both ended in knockouts. So both guys have one knockout in the UFC. Good matchmaking, just weird placement on the card in my opinion. But hey, hopefully it's fireworks and hopefully someone gets a push of this.
Yeah, and there's always weird placements. Like, we could be here all day speaking about the weird placements UFC put on their cards. I'm trying to thinking who. Oh, I was well off. It was Bartosz Fabinski who beat Darren Stewart. I was kind of similar Eastern European name, but besides that, I'm totally wrong. So my bad. But yeah, looking forward to seeing both of these guys in action. Main card. Good luck to them. Well done. They've smashed it really. The first card of the year. All eyeballs are going to be on it, and they're going to be introducing the main card. So good luck to them.
That's it. Keen to see everything that happens to the main card. Is there any prelims you want to speak of before we move on to some news? Or
I like the Amari Ahmedov Tom Breeze fight. That's a really interesting fight on the undercard. I think Ahmedov, he's a solidified top 15 fighter now. He caused Chris Weidman some problems. He picked up a few good wins, but Tom Breeze on his day, he's a potential killer, and he's from our side of the pond. So I like watching him. I like looking out for him. He got a big knockout last time, and I want to see him keep that momentum going now because he's been up and down in his career, and obviously I'm really rooting for him in this one. But Ahmedov, he's no pushover, and he's going to be bringing it no matter what. So that's one that catches my eye. You got any interest in anything else?
not too much, but also I'll speak of Justin Tafer from Australia here. He's taking on Carlos Felipe. Obviously, we saw Justin Tafer in his last time out, I believe, got a win. It was at Fight Island. It might have been the Whittaker Till card. Let me just double check this so I'm not speaking out of turn. 1 second. And obviously Carlos Felipe, I think he lost his last fight out, didn't he? It was like quite a boring matchup with someone. I can't remember who it was against. Give me 1 second. I should have done this beforehand. Tafer knocked out Adams in February. It wasn't at the Fight Island card. It was in February. But yeah, anyway, had a knockout his last time out. So just keen to see what happens in this one. Not expecting too much in terms of the fight, but, it's heavyweight, so anything could happen. It could be a nice knockout.
Yeah, overall, it's a good, strong card. I'd say it's quite top heavy in terms of, I'd say them first 4 fights on the main card are really strong. And then besides that, we always have it. We have the youngsters, coming up and trying to make a name for themselves. And then we also got the old guard, trying to get back into contention. So some good fights. I really am excited for that middleweight fight. But for me, Max Holloway, Calvin Kattar is a standout, and then besides that, you've got a drop off, some good fights. I'll be tuning in. I can't wait to watch. Really, it's been a long while, something we haven't been used to because we had about 20 fights on the run, every
Yeah.
weekend. So to have a few weeks off, I'm missing it already. So happy, very happy to get back into it now.
Absolutely. It was I think June till December, there was just card after card, which was good, but sometimes you do want a little bit of a break, so maybe it wasn't such a bad thing. But jumping back into it, we got some news here. I obviously mentioned it just before, but I have it here again. James Krause wants... Oh, no, I didn't mention this. James Krause wants to fight Diego Sanchez following the call-out. Obviously, Sanchez says he's got one fight left. What are the chances you reckon they make this one?
I prefer that one. Obviously, they're both welterweights. They've both got, fairly good names, and also, they're both about to leave the UFC. As I said, there's pointless matching, someone about to leave the UFC with an up and coming fighter. Put them against each other. James Krause can mix it with, the Carlos Condits, the Matt Browns, the Diego Sanchez. I'm very happy to watch that. I think Krause still got a lot to offer, though. He looked great last time out. So yeah, put him in with Diego Sanchez. I think he'd win. I think Krause would win pretty easily, but it's a good fight, and it does make sense.
Yeah, I get it makes sense, but I just think Krause would run through him. I really prefer that Buckley fight. I think it'd be more competitive. But weight division makes more sense. Stage in a career makes sense. So maybe this is the one they go with.
And Krause isn't necessarily a puncher, so Diego can survive and potentially pull off the upset down the line. So he's not just going to get one bombed and someone's just going to put him out with one punch. James Krause isn't going to do that. So it's going to be a fight. It's going to go into the 5, 10, 15, potentially 15 minutes, and I'd watch it. I do fancy Krause, as you said. I think he'd be a pretty big favourite, but I wouldn't totally count Diego out, and that's what you want at this point of his career. You want him to fight where he's got a chance, and I think that's it.
Fair enough. One last piece of news I have here, which is Dana White said that the winner of Poirier versus McGregor is probably next for a title shot. I get that everyone knew this was coming. I don't think anyone expected any different. But what are your thoughts on that? And obviously, talks with Khabib are going to happen this week. How do you think they go? Do you think he comes back? Everything.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting because I feel like by the time UFC 257 comes around, the title might be on the line. If Khabib doesn't say what the UFC want him to say, I think the title might be on the line for Conor and Dustin, and I feel like it makes sense. I feel like that's fair. They're both really big names. They've both earned it really. I know Conor hasn't been as active as people want to see him lately, but he was the double champion. It makes sense to try and push him from a business standpoint as well. It's still on Khabib, but I honestly don't know what he's going to do. I feel like the longer it goes on, he's kind of looking at Conor McGregor and thinking, I wouldn't mind beating him again now, whereas a few months ago I would have totally ruled that out. So it's going to be interesting to see how it all plays out. I'm looking forward to it. I hope Khabib sticks around because there's big fights to be had. And I hope Dana White can convince him, but he seems pretty confident in himself. He hasn't, kind of let up. He seems convinced he can make him go, and try and get that 30, so hopefully he can.
I'm not buying it. I don't think Khabib's going to come back and fight McGregor. I think Khabib may come back, but if he does, it'll be at 170 and it'll be against GSP. That is the one fight I see him coming back for. I don't see him coming back for any other fight. Whether they can get it to happen at 170, 165, 155, that's yet to be seen. But even if he's to come back, I don't think he defends the lightweight title. And if he does, I just can't see it happening. Yeah, like I was saying before, the technical difficulties. Obviously, I think they put a lot of marketing dollars into this event, have been the first event back with crowds and whatnot. If they could put a belt on the line here, I think it would just take it to the next level. So I see them doing that. Whether it's an interim title or an undisputed title, I think by the time the fight day on UFC 257 rolls around, there'll be a belt on this fight.
Yeah, I think Conor McGregor could sell a pay-per-view, belts, no belts. He could sell a pay-per-view against me or you or a paper bag. It really doesn't matter who he's fighting. But it's just that Dustin Poirier is there, and he's alive. He might be a dog in this fight, but he's a live dog. I think a lot of people fancy Dustin to, go and turn the tables and get a knockout. And I think it's a huge fight with or without the belt. I just feel like UFC are going to want a decision. I feel like if, say, on the Monday of fight week or as the fight creeps closer, they announce that the belt's on the line, it's just going to take the numbers through the roof, I feel like, in terms of people buying the pay-per-view. People who are potentially thinking about, oh, I might not watch this, or I might stream this illegally. Oh yeah, I'll go and buy this now. You know, I want to see this fight. I want to see who the next champion is. I think I don't see Khabib fighting St. Pierre. I just don't see St. Pierre coming back now. I think he's done. I was just writing an article before about him saying he doesn't enjoy fighting. You know, he enjoys winning, he enjoys that side of stuff. But in terms of fighting, he doesn't enjoy it. And to get him back down to, you know, below 170, I think is going to be, you know, pretty much impossible. You know, he was 185 in his last fight, so, and he seems to be doing a lot of strength stuff. He's always doing his gymnastics or whatever he's up to. I just don't see that happening. I think it's Conor if anyone, and I think Khabib is just going to say he's retired. I think that's what's going to happen. We're going to have a belt on the line. It's going to be huge, and either way, I can't wait. I think it works out. If Khabib stays, great. We've got one of the best fighters ever in the sport. If not, we get a huge lightweight title fight on the 23rd of Jan.
Yeah. I think I'm just holding out for that GSP fight, same as I was for the Khabib-Tony fight, you know? It was one of those two fights I just want to happen, but hey, maybe we don't get neither. Likely we don't get either. What are your thoughts? Not what are your thoughts? Do you have any news left? I'm done. I have no more news here.
All I want to mention is the pay-per-view increase, which is...
that's right.
And then you've also got Dana White saying, "Oh, I've got a surprise for all you illegal streamers," and so I think he got a popular website taken down, and it's interesting times because I just feel like right now is the wrong time to be bumping up prices. You know, people are struggling. They can't work for sometimes not getting enough money in the bank, and it's not even like the old times where say $70 pay-per-view, you can go around to your friends and all chip in. People aren't allowed to go to other people's houses and share the load in terms of money. So I was a bit sad to see that, but that's business. And then it's going to be interesting. I think that on UFC 257, there's going to be some... Dana White's got something with Steve in terms of, shutting down all these illegal streamers and trying to push people to buy the pay-per-view even if it's more expensive price. So just interesting from the business side of stuff, little sub thing going on there. It's interesting, and I wish they didn't put the prices up. I really did.
Yeah, and well, the thing with those legal streams that just doesn't make sense to me is I think legally, I could be wrong. I'm not a lawyer, obviously, but I think that the people running the streams are the only ones really violating any crimes. I think people watching them they're watching a stream. I don't think they're liable for reproducing this copyrighted content. So I don't know what Dana White thinks he's going to do, how he's going to catch the people running these streams. Maybe on Twitch. Maybe he's talking about the streams that end up on Twitch. Like when Conor McGregor fights, people jump on Twitch and just live stream them watching the fight. Maybe he's going to crack down those people because they're easy to find. But these big just streaming sites that like have run for years now, I just don't know how he's going to get a hold of them and shut them down. But hey, do what you can, Dana. I'm excited to see what happens.
Yeah, but I don't really get the illegal stream stuff anyway, because there's nothing worse than watching a fight when it might cut out or it might do. I'd rather just pay the money, but obviously it's I don't have to pay $70 every few weeks for these fights, so I feel the pain. I think the UFC should be thinking about putting them down rather than putting them up, or working pay-per-views into Fight Pass and making it like a Netflix deal or a DAZN deal where you pay $20 a month and you get all this content. Something to think about moving forward, but interesting little thing going on ahead of UFC 257.
Yeah, and that's about it. I think. No other news.
Have we got any fight news? Any big fights? It's
I think it's
everything's kind of waiting. Heavy divisions stalling. We're waiting for stuff to happen there. We've got Jan against Israel is official now. Yep. Which is a good fight. I think it's the right move. And the only person getting shafted is Glover. I think he deserves that shot, but I think no one in the middleweight division's missing out.
One thing I will tell you, Dana White saying that Robert Whittaker needs another win now to get a title shot is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. He was just saying after Robert Whittaker's last fight that he had earned a title shot and that he could have a title shot next, and then all of a sudden he changed his tune. That's crazy. I don't understand it.
I know, yeah, but it's one of them. I think Robert Whittaker's going to be happy, go and get another fight, go and get another win, create some distance between, your next title shot and getting, absolutely, blown out by Adesanya. I think the gap, and is he going up to light heavyweight? and potentially losing. You know, Jan's a big hitter. You know, you could potentially crack him and hurt him and get the finish there. So Israel Adesanya comes back down a lesser fighter if he loses that fight in terms of, you know, his ability and just everything. I just think it'd take a lot of shine off him. So Whittaker, you know, he can play the long game. He's there. I feel like he could pretty much have his way with pretty much anyone in that middleweight division besides Izzy. So he'll get there eventually. But yeah, the gap is good. Let the middleweight division play out. Whittaker go and have another fight. Till can fight. All these fighters going to go and have more fights. Costa and Glover just gets shafted. I hope Glover gets a shot this year. You know, 40 years old now. He needs it sooner rather than later while he's still in this, you know, bit of peak.
Yeah, I agree. And I think if Israel does win that light heavyweight title, it's going to be very difficult for Glover. I think he's probably banking on Jan defending, and then he'll get the next shot, you know. Just back on the Whittaker thing, they were speaking about him fighting Paulo Costa, and I guess that makes a lot of sense because Costa was the number one contender. I don't think he was ever number one, actually. I think he was always number two. But he was right there next to Whittaker. But if Whittaker wins this fight, which I think he should, won't break that one down because it's not booked yet, but I think he should win that. How can you deny the man a title shot? He would have taken out everyone in his way. Like, yeah, it's crazy to me.
Yeah, it's almost like his comeback's been too quick and too, you know, too rapid. Like he's gone straight back in against Darren Till, and that was a really, you know, really good win in a good fight. Then Jared Cannonier, he just made it look easy against Cannonier, and they're the two of the top contenders, two of the top five. Just took them out in quick succession, and now he's in this position where less than it was only like a year after he just lost the title, you know, in devastating fashion. He's back ready to go again, and I just don't think the UFC are ready to book it in terms of, does this fight sell? Can we convince the public that Whittaker is any different than he was, you know, in 2019? I get it from a business standpoint. I want to see Whittaker, you know, get that shot, and I think just creating a little bit more distance, having Izzy going up to light heavyweight, having a go at that belt, Whittaker fighting potentially Vittori or Costa or someone like that, getting another win, proving that he's legit still, and I don't mind it.
Fair enough. Well, that's pretty much everything, so we'll wrap it up there. Obviously, we got the fights this weekend, and we'll speak to you just right after them to recap all the action and preview the midweek card. So there's a lot to get through. But thanks for watching, and we'll speak to you then.
Thanks, guys.